Mr. Kim. What you think it is, Andy immediately exclaims, and me reflexively moves a few steps away from the administrator, looking completely calm. First of all, if I hear you threaten the staff of my club with dismissal ever again, Tang shakes his head. I'll kick you out of here faster than you can apologize. I don't, sir, I don't. I did not ask you anything else. Andy, Tang says a little harsher with a hint, then looks at you, Blondie. He nods. Tell me why there is a conflict here. It's not a conflict, Mr. Kim. We are just… Andy tries to explain again, but Tang's single meaningful look is enough to shut him up. A conflict? Me lets out a laugh. Well, maybe because your dear administrator made Jun-kook come here at 4 in the morning and dance cause one of these old men wanted, so she snorts, pointing in the direction of the audience hall. Come. Tang arches an eyebrow. Wasn't he here? Jun-kook took a day off because he wasn't feeling well and stayed at home, the girl explains, giving Andy another scathing look. And that asshole made him come over. Tang frowns, clenching his jaw, and only now looks at Jun-kook. Half-dressed, tired, who just looks at the floor and does not even try to take part in the conversation. And then he notices Andy's hand on the boy's pale forearm and runs his tongue over his teeth. First things first, Andy, he looks at the guy who shrinks under his gaze. Let go of his hand. Right now, Andy obeys, and Tang glances at Jun-kook's hand, where there are reddish marks from others' fingers. If I ever see this again, the boss sounds warning, and neither of them need him to finish the sentence to understand everything. Now go and get back to work. Blondie, he looks at the girl, go and tell everyone to leave the dressing room. No questions, he cuts right off, knowing that she already wants to ask why. Andy, he now shifts his gaze to his subordinate, giving him a forced smile. First of all, find. And secondly, Tang looks at how his face is drawn out and his eyes bulge. We will discuss all of this with you later, so do not think that you will get away with only a fine. A fine. For what? For abuse of your position, Tang replies coldly, and then finally looks at Jun-kook, who is still silent. Jun-kook, yes, sir. He raises his head, answering very quietly. In the dressing room. I want to talk about something with me. Jun-kook raises his eyebrows in surprise. Yes. Go. The boy hesitantly moves forward as Andy watches him with a fixed, suspicious gaze all the way to the door. But when Tang looks at him again as he walks by, he blinks, lowering his head. Go to work, Tang commands unemotionally. Did you not hear me well? No, sir. Sorry, sir. Andy nods again before quickly disappearing down the opposite side of the corridor. Tang, still straight-backed and holding his head high, calmly follows Jun-kook, watching with his eyes as the rest of the dancers leave to another dressing room. He enters a medium-sized room, prudently closing the door behind him, and looks around, not noticing the boy. Jun-kook calmly calls out to the young boy, putting his hands in his pockets. I'm changing. A high-pitched voice calls out, and Tang only now notices movement behind the screen. But you can start saying whatever you want, Mr. Kim. I just want to be back in my clothes as soon as possible, so, Tang clears his throat, attempting to ignore the thought that right now Jun-kook is standing behind a screen, probably complete, and he tries really hard to keep his mind cool. Did you have a day off today? He decides to ask first. I heard your girlfriend said something like that. Didn't you know I asked for the day off because I wasn't feeling well? Jun-kook replies sarcastically, pulling on his jeans. I did not know, It's you who made Andy wake me up to come here to dance for you. What? Tae-hyung freezes, staring at the white screen. No. Nonsense. I did not ask him of that, I swear. When Andy told me to work for the balcony and I saw you there, Mr. Kim, Jun-kook snorts, trying to zip his jeans up. I just thought, what kind of an asshole you have to be, owning this club and being able to watch the shows every night, to make me come over and dance on the only day I asked to let me just rest. And you know what? Jun-kook peeks out from behind the screen, looking at the man standing in the middle of the dressing room. I realized I wasn't even surprised. This was expected of you, and he hides behind the screen again, continuing to dress, and Tae-hyung plays with his cheekbones, falling silent for a few seconds. Why does he even let this kid behave like that to him? Do you even remember who you are talking to? Yes. To the person who took my only day off of the week from me. Jun-kook comes out from behind the screen, puts a sweater on, and sits on the sofa, starting to pull his white high socks over his feet, in which he will hide the edges of his tight jeans so that it is not so cold outside. I work here every night, Mr. Kim. Absolutely every night. And you rob me of the only time I could sleep. Every night. Tae-hyung raises his eyebrows, still watching the boy. I mean, no, none of the dancers work every night. I have seen the work schedules. If you saw it, why are you surprised? You must have seen mine too. Maybe I did not pay enough attention. Whatever. Jun-kook shrugs, then reaches for his red sneakers, starting to put on his shoes and lace them up. Anyway, thanks for ruining my day off. I'm sorry. Okay. Tae-hyung cannot believe he suddenly said that. But I really did not know anything. I came over to check some documents and then I told Andy that I wanted to stay and watch the show. Your show. And he began to convince me that this was not the best choice, and that I would better turn my attention to someone else. And I simply told him that I would decide for myself who I wanted to see. I swear, Jun-kook, I did not know you weren't working today. He throws up his hands as if to confirm his own words, and wonders since when has he even started making excuses to the service staff. But for some reason, for this particular boy he wants to explain the whole truth. And even told me that you were busy private dancing right now, so I had to wait for your performance. Well, Jun-kook fakes a smile, raising his head and looking at his boss as he continues to tie his sneakers. Your Andy knew perfectly that I took a day off today because I wasn't feeling well and needed some sleep. Why don't you? Well, why don't you take a few days off? Tae-hyung suddenly suggests. Officially. Andy will not dare bother you. I can't. Jun-kook sighs, shaking his head, and walks over to the table, now wiping off a thin layer of makeup from his face. I have to work, then paid days off. Tae-hyung puts forward another suggestion, and Jun-kook stares at the mirror as he persistently rubs his skin with a cotton pad soaked in a makeup remover. No, he dismisses. My main earnings are cash and private dance payments, sir, not a salary. I can't just give up a few days. It's a lot of money for me. Tae-hyung is silent. Well, at least he tried to offer the most he could. So the man, deciding that Jun-kook will continue to stand his ground, changes the subject. Why did you need to sleep? Are you sick kind of? And more precisely, do you even care? Jun-kook arches an eyebrow, turning his head to look at the man. Seriously, if I ask, I want to hear the answer. The man nods, sounding confident. Too confident. Jun-kook is amazed by this every time. He wishes he could be just as self-confident when he speaks. I just needed to sleep. I was ready to drop with fatigue, and yesterday I spent the whole day preparing, so both my brain and my body had to rest, preparing for what I needed this night to sleep it off, Jun-kook explains, glancing at his watch. I have an important exam in 3 hours. An exam? Are you a student? You thought I didn't do anything else but undress here for all of your friends? Jun-kook lets out a chuckle as he looks at the man, and then finishes removing his makeup with a tired sigh. No, it's just, to be honest, I do not really care what the staff does during off hours. But I am pleasantly surprised that you study. I'm not going to work here to old age, you know, the boy laughs wearily. So I'm trying to take care of my future. So, an exam, right? And what are you studying? Jun-kook shakes his head, grinning. This man has no one else to talk to? Or is he really interested in what his 18-year-old employee does in his spare time? Economics. Oh, that is great. I studied business and economics when I was at the university, Taekook shares for some reason, and Jun-kook just shrugs. Business. Obviously, Taekook somehow laughs softly, still watching him, and suddenly notices that his own shoulders are completely relaxed now, although he's almost always tense. Are you ready for the exam? All I did for the last week was reading the textbook at any free time, and yesterday after the classes I came back home and studied until I fell asleep, Jun-kook says for some reason, although he is sure that his boss does not care about this. He generally doesn't understand why they're having this whole conversation. So, yes, I did everything I could to prepare well. I'm sorry Andy had to drag you out of bed. Honestly. I hope you got some sleep. Don't worry, I'm used to it. Jun-kook smiles with the corners of his lips and shrugs. And going home to sleep would be pointless now, he states aloud. Thanks to Andy. And what are you going to do all this time? I don't know. Jun-kook pulls on a jacket and then begins to hang his dance costume on his hanger. I think I'll look for some eatery to have breakfast and read a little. He nods at his open backpack, where a corner of the textbook peeks out. Taekook bites his lip as he thinks about it. So Jun-kook dances at the club every night and goes to college in the morning? This is terrible, he thinks. Does this boy even sleep? Okay, listen, the man, unexpectedly even for himself, decides to offer. Jun-kook looks at him with interest. What if I feed you breakfast and drive you to the university? As an apology. It is kind of my fault that Andy made you come here. Breakfast. Jun-kook chuckles. Breakfast with you, Mr. Kim? Do not look at me like that. Taekook shakes his head. I'm really sorry this happened. I feel guilty even though I'm not. You are so thoughtful, sir, the boy chuckles. Have to refuse. Why, believe me, we prefer to have breakfast in different places. My treat. Certainly no. Jun-kook snorts, grinning again and shaking his head. I don't want to feel like I owe you. No, you will not owe me. I would really like to treat you to breakfast and then drive you to the university. You would like to treat me to breakfast? Jun-kook nods playfully, scanning him with his eyes. At 5 in the morning. You like early rise, sir? Just grab your goddamn things and let's go. I know a place. I'm not going anywhere with you, Mr. Kim, Jun-kook says with a wave of his hand, and Taekook raises his eyebrows in surprise. The boy throws a backpack over his shoulder, and then walks closer to the man, looking up into his eyes. I still remember how you tried to get into my pants. Twice. It's just breakfast. Taekook shrugs calmly. No obligation. I promise. I would like you to have breakfast instead, but we will talk about it next time. Taekook thinks, but he keeps those thoughts to himself. If nothing else works, he has to try to win the boy's favor. Otherwise the obsessive thoughts about will soon start to drive Taekook crazy. Jun-kook narrows his eyes at him suspiciously, and Taekook rolls his eyes and then touches his shoulder, slowly moving his hand down to his thin wrist. Let's go. I'll just treat you breakfast and give you a ride so you are not late to make amends for today.